The thing that completely crushed me in our relationship before things changed was the mental load. I was carrying the entire mental burden of operating our household, and I was just being completely crippled under it.
We cannot have a podcast focus on chatting about everything midlife and not talk about the thing we love, the thing we hate, the thing that runs our life way more than we wish it did. I'm talking about money, honey. So true story, when I was 18, in my first semester of college, I took a family finance class that focused on the time value of money, which was an absolute snooze and made me think there was no way I would ever be interested in talking about the details of finance ever again. And that point stands. If you start talking to me about the stock market and budgeting tips, my eyes are going to glaze over. But here's the thing. There are some topics as an adult human with a pulse and a brain that we need to talk about and start to understand. And it has nothing to do with how much you have in the bank, whether you're wishing for that yacht life under chopper blades, or dreaming of a driveway with a basketball hoop, like our good friend Taylor Swift says in her song Wishlist. No, there is something that we as women in midlife truly need to know, which is understanding our relationship with money, finding fairness in your partnership when it comes to money, what it means in your partnership, which, newsflash, covers much more than income, and what you're wanting not just 5 years down the road, but 25 years down the road too. So I am thrilled to have my guest today, who is truly knowledgeable in all of those things. I have Heather Boneparth, who is truly a powerhouse. Not only is she a lawyer and the head of business and legal affairs at she and her husband Douglas's wealth management firm, Bonafide Wealth, she is also the author of 2 books, The Millennial Money Fix on helping millennials achieve financial freedom, and her newest book, Money Together, which focuses on helping couples overcome financial differences as a team. Heather is truly a seasoned and knowledgeable voice on the intersection of love, money, and family. Please welcome to the podcast, Heather Boneparth.
Oh, thank you so much, Chrissi. That was quite the intro.
I'm so excited to have you on. I'm seriously, I have known that an episode like this has been a long time coming. I've been wanting to chat about the intersection of money and relationships for a while now, but I also knew that I was completely out of my depth if I were just going to talk about it myself. I would say I have as much expertise if you can think way, way back to the movie The Wedding Singer. If you think of Adam Sandler's character, Robbie Hart, he goes in to apply for a job at the bank. And he's like, I'm a big fan of money. I like it. I use it. I have a little. I'd like to have more. That's where you come in. And Heather, that's where you come in because
that is I am not the reference ever. Can we just a moment for the reference? Great reference. Yes. Elder millennial here living for this.
Yes.
Living for this.
And we can all relate to it, right? I have a little, I like a little more. I don't really understand a lot about it. I'm so excited to have somebody who knows not just money, but also you get the vibe of the midlife woman. You are, you're a mom, you have daughters. Tell us about yourself.
Absolutely. So I am what I would like to call a recovering corporate lawyer, a newly minted 40-year-old as of over the summer. Very
Welcome
exciting.
To the club.
Thank you. Honestly, it feels fantastic. It really does, right? I am a recovering corporate lawyer. I spent over a decade in the commercial insurance industry, learning a lot about risk, which has a lot to do with money. But, in this next season of life, I asked myself what would make me the happiest, what would fill my cup, what my next act looked like. And so much of that involved the work that I was already doing with my husband, Douglas, who founded our firm, Bonafide Wealth, years ago. He's been a financial advisor since he was 20 years old. And I've always kind of been I tell people that I'm his Kris Jenner. And I always have been. I'm like, we're done giving away the milk for free, honey. It's time to cut the deal. So at a certain point, we decided that it was right for me to come and join him at the firm and to build out all of our thought leadership and our platforms and to really dig into some of the issues that were plaguing not only our personal life, but the lives of our clients and other millennial, Gen X, even now Gen Z couples as they face new chapters and new challenges in their lives. So that's how I ended up at Bonafide Wealth. And now, we just wrote a new book.
I think that is so cool. And I mean, it's like you are a woman who wears many hats. You're juggling a lot of things, but you have a lot of experience. And one thing I've really noticed, and like as I read the book, loved the book. It was so fantastic. 0% boring. 0% boring.
It is not boring. That's what I try and tell people, like first of all, to try and entice people to read a book about couples and money when it's one of the hardest things for people to talk about. Like there's a reason nobody's written this book yet. It's because it is really, really hard. I spent 2 years interviewing 60 plus couples for 100 plus hours, like really digging into what was going on behind the numbers. Like we did not even talk about numbers with these folks.
I don't think you mentioned numbers at all. I don't think there was zero financial formulas. There was zero hard, like, budgeting, like cut out the avocado toast. Like, absolutely no.
We get enough of that. We get those talking heads on TV. We get them in those clickbait articles that are like, here's the 4 things you need to do. And look, I'm all about financial content. But when it came to what I thought was missing from that financial content, it was the feelings, it was the human behavior, it was the reasons why we do the things we do. And the things that I felt like I didn't have words for in my relationship that had a ton to do with money, but it wasn't about the numbers. So that's kind of what led us here, right? And I think people will find it, readers will find it, and particularly women will find this an approachable way to find language for things that are very hard to talk about.
Absolutely. Like, okay, for example, one of my favorite scenes in Parks and Recreation, which I know not everybody has watched, but like Kristen Bell, she is this recurring guest character. She's this lady who's a very hoity-toity, like rich lady. And they're at this business meeting and she says, we don't really like to talk about money. Like she like whispers it.
Can you give us a little more information surrounding the deficits that you're running this year?
Ooh, gosh. We don't really like to talk about money. We find it a little gauche.
This is a budget meeting.
And it's like, yeah, that's how a lot of people feel. Like, we don't like to talk about money, but guess what? There are conversations that need to happen. There's knowledge that needs to be gained. And so what I loved is that you broke it up in sections where you're saying, before we talk about your relationship with your partner about money, we have to talk about like individuals. We have to talk about your own relationship with money, because that's how the stories begin.
And when you think about relationships, it's yours, mine, and ours. You have to be able to do the self-work before you can do the couples work. And that's why we began the book by focusing on, like you said, like even, right, from Kristen Bell from Parks and Rec, this idea of like, we don't talk about money. That is how so many people grew up. When we look back, that's why we ask you to look back at how your money journey began as a child. Like, there are behaviors that are steeped in our identity because they started so long ago, and that comes from our culture. Some cultures, it's like very faux pas to talk about money. And I mean cultures, whether that's a religious background, whether that's a geographic background, like even in certain areas that you just would not talk about money, but also different socioeconomic situations that you might be carrying leftover scarcity or panic or shame or fear from that time in your life. And so what you bring into your adult life are those behaviors, unless you find ways through them and find ways to examine your life and say, hey, are the circumstances that made me believe those things still present in my life today? And if they're not, then maybe this is the moment to move on from them in order to create a new life and a new money story with your partner.
One thing that really came to mind for when you were talking about kind of the beginnings, and I was thinking, what is my very first memory with money? And I remembered when I was probably 5 years old. And at the time, my dad had lost his job. And my parents didn't loop me into, that to a great degree. But I remember the story of me walking into my parents' room, seeing my mom crying on the bed, and me saying, Mommy, what's going on? And she was saying, I'm just really stressed out. Daddy doesn't have a job. He's working really hard to find one. And that was kind of my first, I think, connection of, oh, there's possible to not have money. And when you don't have money, that means stress, that means hard things. And, luckily my dad found a great job, and, it's like our lives were not unstable or bumpy. But then fast forward years later, when my husband and I, you don't know this, but my husband and I got married super young. I was 20, he was 22. We were in college, right? And so we were broke as a joke. Okay. I remember one time we were newlyweds, me looking at our bank statement, and we had $6 to last us the next week. And I feel like that, whatever little seed that was planted in 1989 of like little Chrissi realizing money can equal stress, it was like, phew, my young adulthood. And so feeling that money anxiety and like the scarcity for real. So those are things that I had never made that connection, but hey, it was there. And there are ways that even now I recognize those little things still creep up on me. And so like, what have you learned about, people's money beliefs, how they begin, when do they begin? Why do we reach adulthood without realizing how deeply these stories shape us?
Well, I can tell you that for me personally, even as I chose to embark on this project, and I knew I have a very unique money story, and I carry a lot of money baggage from my childhood. I didn't make the connection from my childhood trauma to my money story until I began work on this book. And until I began speaking with a host of like the best in class experts. My dad had a near-death experience when I was 11, and it was truly my worst nightmares and fears as an only child come true. And as a result of that, my parents ended up getting a divorce 2 years later. And so many of my fears and my messed up relationship with money and the two families that were both sending me the messages about money that were wildly different. I was living with my mother who had left her career years earlier to care for me and now had to figure out what the next chapter of her life looked like. She was presenting a picture of scarcity in my life, which was money is fear. We should be afraid. We should be emotional, and we're never going to have enough. Like we're in survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
And then my father's family, which was very different, and he came from wealth and privilege, but I was at an arm's length with him during those years because
lots of strings with that. Right?
There was there were
attached.
lots of strings with his family, and then with him, he wasn't really in the picture for me for a while, and I had used as a cope this idea that he was allowed to go out and pursue his version of happiness in his 40s because he almost passed away. And so I had protected myself by saying that he deserved that opportunity. But the result of that was the only way that I really knew how to seek anything from him was through money. And it became this conversation of like, whenever I needed something, I mean, what I really needed was love, attention, guidance, support. And the only thing I could ask for was financial support, because that was really the only thing that he had to give me at that point in his life. And so I grew up with this very like diametrically and opposite views of money, of emotional, scary on one hand, and lacking in shame and feeling like money equals love. And when you're not given money, love is being withheld. And so I shared this with you because it's so deep, right? These things run so deep in your life. And you could think that you've broken through them and you find yourself staring across a major financial decision or a new major financial moment in your life, and it all comes rushing back. And then you're there again. And the reason this is so important to explore, again, it's not just for self-work, it's because when you let your partner into these stories, when you let your partner in, whether the story comes from trauma, like childhood trauma like mine, or whether it comes from your religious background, whether it comes from your socioeconomic conditions, like a parent losing a job and feeling like things dramatically changed, whether it comes from your culture or it comes from, any number of which things. When you let your partner into this, you are opening the door to greater empathy between the two of you. And that empathy is how you create compromise, understanding, and you make room for moving through these behaviors in a more constructive way. So, without understanding those stories, like you may know the facts about your partner. You might know that they grew up in Oklahoma. They had 2 brothers. Do you know what it was like for them growing up? Do you know what their holidays looked like? Like, look, do you know what Christmas was like for them? Was it joyous or was it lacking? These are the things that you might not know unless you ask. The first chapter of the whole book is called Your Story is Your Story. And the idea that we pull from that is, regardless of what your socioeconomic condition is, like as an example, You can't race to the bottom with your partner about who had it worse. You can't just say, well, you grew up with more money than me, so your feelings don't matter, or your situation looked a little better than mine. Look, I know that sounds like very harsh, but people do it all the time because when we get comfortable with people, we tend to, it's easier to become dismissive. It's easier to look for, to take out your disappointment or to project on people that you love. It's just easier to do. So we tend to discount things. And it's the wrong way to approach it, right? Like, my story is uniquely mine. On paper, there were moments in my life where I experienced greater privilege than my husband did. But my circumstances with my interpersonal relationships in my family were way more challenging than his at an early age. Your story is your story. The point is to find it out, not to make a comparison and say whose should matter more. They both matter.
To think that, oh, you had the harder or you had the easier, you grew up with wealth, so you had it made in the shade. Like, absolutely not. I feel like once we understand where our beliefs come from, it makes sense that, like, okay, we are human. There are things that are good. There are things that are bad. We make mistakes, and not because we're trying to be like financially irresponsible or like we don't care. I think back to, this is like a very deep cut, but like you think of Tori Spelling, for example. Okay.
Oh my God.
She was raised with such wealth, right? I mean, she grew up in this like 50,000 square foot house, hundreds of millions of dollars. Then she becomes adult. She goes out on her own. She's essentially, her father passes and it's like she gets nothing, but she's always had a lot of financial difficulty that, like, poor woman has been like splashed out in the media of like, oh, this is the debt and this is the bankruptcy or whatever. But it's like she was obviously never taught about budgeting or taught about, money management, because this was just her reality. The reality was, I see it, I want it, prices don't matter.
That's what was modeled for her, and that's the world that she grew up in. We interviewed a couple and a man in particular who grew up with multi-generational wealth, like multi-generational family wealth. And I kept asking him, and I tried like several ways to ask him. I said, like, so when did you become aware of how wealthy you were? When and how did it hit for you that this is your life? And he said, well, and he just chuckled. And he's like, you have to understand. I know that my family owned a brownstone on the Upper East Side, but they were kids that owned the whole block. Those were the kids that I went to school with. So
it's all relative.
It is all relative. And that's why, like, it is really important. Your perception of your conditions is what drives your financial behavior. You can pass judgment on it all you want. That's the truth.
I feel like just kind of gaining some empathy, forgiving yourself for kind of the silly things or maybe the unwise financial decisions, but also like your partner, your spouse. And you can even extend that to, you think of your parents, your family of origin. When you see that they did things, like you have a little bit more empathy for them. I mean,
Absolutely.
You have a whole section on mistakes, which I really appreciated.
It was really important because I feel like, again, like we talk about the types of mainstream money information out there in the media, and it's very easy to just be like, here's 4 things you shouldn't do. Everyone has opinions on what you shouldn't do. And to me, like, the idea of a mistake, like with most things, we don't care what you do. I care more about how you move through things that haven't gone the way you planned. That is what's more important to your relationship. How do you move past? How do you move beyond? How do you heal from the things that aren't serving you, or things you regret, or things that just, didn't work out? Because sometimes, like, you have to be able to let go and move on.
Absolutely.
It's critical. The chapter where we introduced parenting and talking about money and becoming parents, I call When You Know, You Know. And the idea is just, you have no idea. I don't care you have no idea till you know. Till you're in it, you have
Read
no
all
idea.
the parenting books, do all the whatever planning until you're in it.
You just don't know. And you could have a plan. You could say, I'm going to breastfeed my baby for 9 months. Well, guess what? I thought I was too. And my first daughter came out 5.5 weeks early. And that was not feasible. It was not medically feasible at a point in time when milk wasn't coming in. The baby needed to be fed every 2 hours. The plan was out the window. Everything went out the window. Within hours of her being born, the plan was out the window. And it just was the first example of it. A lifetime of fluid decisions and changes. And that applies to your money too, right? Like, sometimes the math doesn't math, especially when it comes to kids. And that has to be okay.
Yes. I mean, it's like one clip that I had you watch before this was like, again, a Parks and Rec clip where Leslie Knope, Amy Poehler's character, finds out she's expecting triplets, and her husband, who's his name in the show has been I can't think of, Adam Scott, that's his name. He's an accountant, and he is furiously behind his laptop, and he's like, triplets. And, he's like crunching the number, and he's like, how are we going to afford triplets? It's going to cost, over $2 million to raise them.
We're screwed. I mean, of course, it's the most amazing and wonderful thing that ever happened, but okay, I am an accountant, and I am looking at cold, hard facts. Raising 3 kids is going to cost $2 million. I have been trying so hard not to stress you out, but we just spent our entire savings account on a trip to Paris. What were we thinking? We spent too much money on macaroons.
Hey, honey.
Okay, wait, what's the number for the Louvre? I mean, maybe I can get a refund. We barely looked at the Mona Lisa.
Honey, can you just breathe for a second?
Leslie, these numbers are going to determine everything for the rest of our lives.
Benjamin
I
Wyatt,
don't even know.
the man of my dreams, the one that I love.
Leslie, we are in trouble here. We are in real trouble.
The math doesn't math, and it's like the way that you thought you were going to do things, you can plan and plan all you want, but like in reality, practicality, it's like there is so much maneuvering that needs to be done. There is so much kind of like bobbing and weaving and figuring out what's going to work. And so like if you go into your relationship, I mean, back to the essentially like down the middle, every little thing, you're going to realize real quick that is going to be a breeding ground for resentment. That's going to be a breeding ground for like fights, problems.
I'll give you a great example also from the early days of Hazel's life, my now newly minted 10-year-old. When she was first born, people always say, take turns feeding the baby, right? Take turns in the middle of the night. Don't both wake up. I was a mess with my first baby. And I had terrible postpartum anxiety. Again, this idea that she was out 5.5 weeks early. I was terrified. I had a 4-pound baby at home. Like, it was just very scary. And everyone's like, take turns. You need to sleep. You take one. Douglas will take one. And her nursery, we lived in New York City at the time. So like our bedroom was like down a hallway. The walls are like thick concrete. Like the monitor we bought wasn't working. We opened up the sofa bed and we slept in the living room, which was right next to like
all
the dining
three of you?
nook. All 3 of us for like 2 weeks. And we woke up together for every single feed and for every diaper change. It was what we needed. It made no sense. We were both more tired because we did it, but we needed each other in that moment until we both felt comfortable not having an extra hand throughout that. Like, it doesn't make sense. And the same goes with money. Like it does not make sense. We spoke with a couple for this chapter in the book that they had purchased a townhome that they thought was going to be perfect. They found out, surprise, just like Parks and Rec, they had twins. And everything suddenly,
plans out.
Yeah, the plan was gone, and they had the pandemic hit. They had this crazy neighbor that was dropping weights left and right, and he was like a fitness guru dropping weights every 2 hours. They had to buy a house in the middle of the pandemic when the rates were going up and the housing market was crazy and everything. Like, it was the worst possible time for them to buy a house. The math didn't math, but they did it anyway because it was what was right for their family. And I make this point because I think people need permission to understand that the plan that they once had may no longer be the plan, and that's okay. So much of this book is about embracing the flexibility and the fluidity that life requires because we don't get to control, we don't get to know what always happens next. And I think that when people get so caught in not only the ideas they had, but then like they put that pressure on each other, on their partner, to try and like fit that round peg back in that square hole. And that just may not be where their life is anymore. So we want to give that permission throughout.
Which I so appreciate because, I mean, if you look at it on paper and you don't know the nuance of the situation, you might look at that couple and be like, you are crazy. How could you buy a house during the pandemic? All these things, you're just lighting money on fire, right? And it could look like a huge financial mistake, but it's like you realize, hey, we had to do what we had to do. And I mean, when you think of like financial mistakes, it's like the goal is obviously you don't want to do things that you know are going to be terrible, but like life, oftentimes you have to do the thing to survive so you don't completely burn out.
Yeah, and there's a duality that applies to all of this, especially, I mean, people talk about the duality of parenthood all the time, and I'm like a big believer in this. Like, yes, I'm exhausted and I love every minute with my children. I wish I had time alone, and I wouldn't take that time alone if it meant missing something important for the kid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these dualities exist every day. Like, I look at my career is both harder and better because I'm a mom. But at the same time, so when it comes to money, like, yes, you should still be making decisions that make financial sense on paper. And you have children, and the decisions may not always be the ones you originally laid out, and you may have to do something the way you didn't want to do it. But that's just
Absolutely.
That's life.
Okay, if today's episode made you rethink your relationship with money or realize your money attitude might be a little more like Kristen Bell's Parks and Rec character than you'd like to admit, do me a favor. Tell your people about Found at 40. Text a friend, send a DM, shout it out in the group chat. And bonus points if you share this episode on your socials, because algorithms love community almost as much as we love financial security. Your support keeps this midlife money magic going. Now go be rich in friendships, and maybe someday in cash too. So one thing that I loved, the chapter in this book that I seriously, the highlighter, it was just like one giant highlighted section, was the section about contributions, okay? Because this hits me near and dear to my heart. Let's think about my life. Like, I have decided, my husband and I have decided this together, that we're going to lean into his career and that we were going to have my whatever type of employment career. Mine was going to be a much more flexible, more part-time situation, but I was going to be home and I was going to be available. And that was something that we definitely were both on board with and we felt good about and still feel good about. But it's also hard because I do feel a conflict of like, oh, I could be kind of equally careered up, I suppose. It's like, oh, we think, oh, how do we want to retire? And, wouldn't it be nice to be able to pay off our mortgage faster and to do all of these things?
Sure.
But, we also feel like this is what is the right fit for us in our family, which doesn't work for everybody else. But I wanted to just really stress, like, the thing that you put in the book under the contributions section is, let's start with the myth that exists in so many marriages, which is provider equals the person with a paycheck. And it's like, I don't know what type of garbage the patriarchy was selling when that myth began, but I'd like to formally end it now. And you formally ended it as well.
Woohoo,
in the book,
it's over.
Being like, no, that is not, I mean, we wish it could be over, but it's like,
I know.
the mindset.
It is so true. It is so critical. When we talk about what is it and where is it and how is it that marriages and relationships, especially in heterosexual relationship, becomes unfair. And I ask myself at work too, where were the moments that I felt like my career began to take a hit? Where were the moments that I call it the Bermuda Triangle of my career? Where was it that I began to plateau? And is there data that supports this? And there is. And not shockingly, I should say, it shouldn't surprise you that it happens to be in the years where many women begin to have children. And I think that so much of this, because we talk about gender equity out in the world, it begins with the couple equity at home. It's just the truth. And so we as a society have been for far too long focused on who produces and not enough on how we provide and the ways we can provide for each other. And when you think about who providers are, you ask yourself, who provides for your family? And I think it's like, again, like you said, like there's a patriarchal view of, well, I make the money, I provide. Then what is your partner doing? What is your partner doing at home when she's taking care of your children, handling all of the household inventory, when she's doing the laundry, the cooking, the shopping, the scheduling, the holidays? Caregivers are providers too, because
absolutely,
you would not be able to go out in the world and provide in the ways that you do if there was not someone facilitating your ability to do that at home. So we want to level the playing field around time and around the way that we think about whose time and which ways of providing matter more. There isn't one way that matters more. They matter the same.
They're different. They're so different.
So different, but they matter the same.
Yes, they're both crucial. They both have the same importance. Like, I think of just this week, okay, my son, he's 16, he had a toothache. And so I had to get him into an emergency dentist appointment, which resulted in 3.5 unexpected hours at the endodontist the other day. I shoulder that responsibility 100% myself. And it's not to say like, oh, this big flex, but it's like, guess what? My husband is able to do what he doesn't have, the work balance that he does, because I have my home work balance,
That's right.
You can't tell me that I didn't provide and that I don't continually provide just because, okay, maybe I do not have a paycheck that is equal with his. Absolutely not. But gosh, you say it 3 times in a row in the book. You say caregivers are providers 3 times at the end of the
I
chapter.
had to
and
write it 3
loved
times. Once wasn't enough. It had to be
Yes.
3 times. I wanted it to take up space on the page. And
Absolutely,
in your
like
mind.
say it louder for the people in the back, because truly, and that's something that I have kind of grappled with. Like I said just a few minutes ago, am I doing enough?
Let me share this with you. We asked couples, and particularly couples where one partner was staying either, in a season of caregiving where they were not earning an income outside of the home, and also those who earned substantially less than their spouse. We asked whether they feel free to spend. And the answer to that question, to me, said a lot. Many of them said they did not. Free to spend, not in terms of like getting the things for the house that you need, but things for themselves.
Yeah, a little bit of guilt of like, ooh, this is somebody else's money that earned that, so I gotta pull back a little bit.
Well,
right?
and I'll tell you, look, I never even really thought about it that way until I had left my corporate law job to join Bonafide Wealth. Because I don't even think I realized how much of my own self-worth I had tethered to that paycheck until I stopped receiving it. And so when I joined the firm, I had this insane idea. I was like, I have to like replace my 6-figure salary within 12 months or it's not going to be worth me being here. One, that's insane because the business operates completely differently and that's just like not how it works. And my husband knows this, so he was like chuckling. He's like, what do you think you're going to do in 6 months? In like 6 months, it's going to replace your entire salary. Like that's not how you're going to improve this business and our life. Like that's just not how it works. I think the thing is too, like I thought I was going to replace my salary entirely because I didn't feel free to spend on anything for myself during that time. Like I didn't want to replace a mascara, like a nice mascara when I ran out of it. I didn't want to buy a new pair of boots when I wore through the heel on my boots. Like I didn't even realize that it was happening. Like I just started doing it because I realized that I had tethered my agency to the fact that I was earning an income. And how wrong is that? And it wasn't even him doing it. It was me doing it. And
it was all you.
It was, and so many of the couples I spoke with, in most situations, there was not a spouse, a husband saying, you can't do that. There were many instances where the husband was saying, I tell her all the time, take time for you, go to a spa, go do this, go do that. And it was just, whether or not he actually supported that in other areas of their life, I wanted to say, well, are you providing her the time? You might be saying, sure, use some of our joint finances to do this, but are you affording her the time to take on things that she wants to do and pursue? Are you affording her time for self-care? Are you affording her time for self-discovery or to self-improve, to continue to improve your life as an individual, not just as a mother, but as an individual? Yeah. And that's how this idea of time and care and money are all inextricably linked concepts.
Absolutely. It's not just the numbers in and out. There's so much more to it.
That's
I
right.
mean, one thing that that you talked about in the book that I loved was you kind of discussed the division of labor, the emotional labor, the mental load, and you referenced a Pew Research study where they're saying women carry a heavier home load in almost all heterosexual marriages. The only exception is for the 16% of women who are the sole breadwinners, and even there, the husbands and wives are doing roughly the same load at home, which I was just like, oh my God.
It's wild. When it comes to division of labor, we didn't try and recreate the wheel. We reference Eve Rodsky's Fair Play. I don't believe there's a better system than that in terms of dividing responsibilities in a more equitable way and how to break it down into micro tasks and really split those up. But the concept for me that has really changed our lives, like personally at home, is this idea from Fair Play about conceptualizing, planning, and executing. Like in my instance, the mental load is what was crushing me more than anything. Yeah, like I still do I like doing laundry. I know that's like weird, but I like doing laundry. I like it folded. I like everything washed the way that I like it washed. I know nothing will get ruined. I also like to cook. I'm like a bit of a home chef. I love to cook. But the thing that completely crushed me in our relationship before things changed was the mental load. I was carrying the entire mental burden of operating our household. Every appointment, every plan, and it was also during COVID, so it was like this whole other mental gymnastics about what we should and shouldn't do and decisions that had to be made and whether you notify this person about that. And I was just being completely crippled under it. And so this idea of conceptualize, plan, and execute is that like, it's meant to dispel your spouse being able to say, I help, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Which to me is like, no help at all. Like, that's no help at all.
Yeah, because all of it is in your head.
I want you to know that something needs to be done to then do it, right? That's what I want you to think about it. I want you to plan for it, and then I want you to do it. So like, I'll give you a great example from our own life. Douglas has taken over our daughter's swim schedule. She swims on a swim team. And I was like, you are now swim dad. Swim dad doesn't just drive to swim. Swim dad at the beginning of the season registers her for swim. He even buys the bathing suit. He buys the competitive bathing suit. He puts all the meets on our family calendar. He packs her bag for all the meets. I want to show up like a dad to those meets. And I do. I don't know anything about swim. I deleted the emails. I don't even open them. And then I show up and I walk in and I'm like, go Hazel. It's great. And you know what? I deserve that. I do, because that swim is his responsibility. Period.
I love that. I love that you were able to recognize and see, this is a way I can completely offload this task. Because just saying like, oh, you'll drive her, but I'll still do everything else. Like, how much burden does that really relieve? Just a portion of it.
Or even saying to your spouse, like if your spouse offers to drive a carpool, like, and you're like, are you guys going to leave anytime soon? Like, if you still have to be watching the clock to remind them, right? It's not helpful. It's not helpful. Like, and then just like for you to just take the 10 minutes to drop someone off somewhere. It's not that, so this idea, again, because we talk about saving time, it's not just the physical efforts of saving time. It's the mental, it's the emotional effort of everything that goes into it to free up space. This whole idea of equity is about making room for your partner. And that's allowing them to make room for themselves too.
How do you explain the emotional and mental load to partners who just don't see it? They don't realize that it's draining. They don't see that there is a huge inequality that needs to be remedied.
See, but that's why I like the fair play system so much, because they've broken it down into 100 cards that really share these micro tasks, and they make the invisible things visible. Because you're right. Like, I don't think my husband could have conceptualized some of the things. I'm going to give a great example. Do you know what, like how hard, I mean, I know you know, I shouldn't say do you know, because I know you know, about flipping your children's clothing for the seasons or as they get older and having to say, okay, we need to do a full closet audit.
Oh yeah, we got to do the cycle. We got to do the rotate.
Yeah, the cycle takes weeks, right? How do you make that more visible? It's very difficult to do. That's why I like that system so much, because it really creates enough micro tasks that you can see things that you weren't able to see before. I think that that's one great way to do it. I mean, we incorporate a conversation around time into our money dates and into the money dates that we suggest that couples do every quarter. That is another way to make time visible. It's not just in passing and me saying, do you know the 4 things that I just thought about? No, of course he doesn't know the 4 things in your head that you've been worrying about today. But when you incorporate time into your regular money date, which to us should happen every quarter, not more often than that, but a comprehensive date night, like night out or night at home, that's might be several hours long, we incorporate time into that, because that gives you the floor to also say, here's what I've been spending my time on this last quarter. I really got bogged down on XYZ. And I think this is something that if I was either able to get your help with in the next quarter, or we were able to outsource, because what better time is there to talk about what things you could outsource and maybe afford to spend money on than when your numbers are right in front of you during the money date? It's the perfect time to do it. So we do tie those two things together. Like for us, when we sit down for our money dates, like we had decided to forego after school childcare this year. It was a really big deal for us because we've had it historically just between the hours of like when school ends and when the workday ends. We've always had an extra hand. But this was the first year our daughters are finally in the same elementary school. So they have one pickup and we live 5 minutes from school. And we said, let's try it for the fall. Let's try to not have someone. But guess what comes up in every quarterly meeting now? We talk about it. We say, so how do we think the fall went without having an extra set of hands? Heather, you're the one who's doing most of the pickups. How does it felt for you? Is this good, or is it ruining your whole afternoon and you're not getting that time back? Like, I wanted to do it, and I say, well, it is hard for me to lose that 45 minute, like that window to have a meeting between, 2 and 3 p.m. or whatever, 3 and 4 p.m. But I really enjoy it. Can we find a way later in the evening for me to recoup that time? Maybe when you're done with your meetings for the day, if you start doing dinner a little bit more. Mm-hmm. If you do dinner 2 days a week, I can go upstairs and recoup that time. And then it's not something that feels like I'm at a deficit. So this is just one example of like how the right time and place to make this visible does exist. It does. But yeah, it's really all about communication.
It's being intentional. I mean, I love that the idea of having a money date, because there are so many times where it's like, oh, there'll be this situation, that situation where in the moment, I'm annoyed about it. My husband's annoyed about it. This didn't go right. Like, we dropped the ball in this way. And those conversations, yes, you need to address it, but maybe there would be a little bit more constructive, and you could avoid a lot of the pitfalls. If you're saying once a quarter, we're talking about this, we're assessing the responsibilities that we're having as a couple with our family, what's good, what's not good, what is a total time suck, what can we outsource, what redivision of time and responsibility can happen.
Time and place really, really matter when it comes to talking about money. That is the reason why couples either fight a lot about it or they avoid the conversation altogether, is because they're usually picking the wrong time and place to do it. The worst time to talk about money is probably the time that most families do it. During family rush hour. Everyone's at home. People are trying to go places. There's dinners being made. There's kids in the bath or the shower. Everyone's running around. That is not the time to bring up a financial question or issue that needs to be addressed. But we all do it. Like, it's truly the worst time to do it. So, it really matters. Like, you want to get together when tensions are low and attention is high. So that might not be during a work day. That might be like you have to carve out that time, block it off on your calendar. You might have to hire a babysitter, whatever it takes for you both to have a constructive setting to be able to address these things together. Because at a money date, you are going to want time to go into the numbers too. You're going to want to talk about how your budget looked the last quarter. You're going to want to talk about, does spending feel good? Did you feel like it was lacking in one area? Was there something that maybe you wish went a little bit differently financially? And then also talk about these other things. I mean, you really need the right environment to do this successfully. Like, the environment is so much of this.
One thing that I realized, I guess, to continue of like, okay, what things are going to help you long term, and having those conversations, having those money meetings. Another thing that I really learned is your concept on financial power, which I thought was so fascinating that I truly had never really thought of. For me, like, this is kind of embarrassing, but like, for me, always ignorance was bliss a little bit, or at least I was just not bothered by the intricacies of like finances, investment, savings. Like, for me, I thought previously I was like, that's just one thing left on my plate. My husband, he's in charge of all of it.
I understand but so many, you know what a lot of people do? It's really easy to lull yourself into thinking you don't need to know when things are good.
Truly. That is it. Under the good circumstances, you think, oh, I don't need to do it. But it's like, okay, this is not the flex that I thought it was. Because guess what? Anything can happen. Anything can happen with jobs. Anything can happen with health. Anything can happen with whatever life circumstances. And so like, there aren't a lot of how-tos in Money Together. But you talk about these 3 parts of stepping into your power with money, and you make things crystal clear. So could you outline those? There are 3 big things that people need to know.
Absolutely. And this is critical. And we said if there was one place for us to do this, it's here. So you need to become intimate with your household finances. And that's regardless of who pays the bills. Like, you just have to know. So we were just talking a few minutes ago about like divvying up responsibilities and who holds which tasks in the household. I don't care who's actually paying the bills. Like, look, my husband is a financial advisor. He is a money expert. Of course, he's going to handle the week-to-week tasks of our finances. That is what makes the most sense. But that doesn't absolve me of my responsibility of knowing about it. And so when I say gain knowledge, this is what this means. You need to gain access. Access is critical. And you would be shocked how many people do not have access to their bank accounts, who do not have the app, like the banking apps on their phones with the password saved, and you need to have the same access as your spouse to everything. Easy first step to take. Everyone listening to this can take this step today. If they don't have it on their phone, get it. Get logged in, save the password. It'll help you become more intimate with your finances too, because it's just so easy. It's on your phone. 2, you need to know these 4 things. And this is like the financial advisory side of stuff. What you make, what you spend, what you have in terms of your assets, and what you owe in terms of your liabilities. These numbers are the most important pieces of your financial life. And the more intimate you become with them, the more comfortable you're going to become talking about them, right? And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It might take a while. You might have to do this, not just 1 quarter. You might have to sit down and do this for 4 quarters or, 2 years, 8 money dates. It may take that long for you to become intimate enough with your finances to say, I know that our family spends between $6,000 and $7,000 a month, or whatever it is, right? It might take you that long to become intimate with it. That is cool. Okay, the next thing is you have to attend meetings. Like if you work with the financial advisor, attend the meetings. You need to be there. You can't outsource that. And you got to find ways to care that always work for you. And like, this is what I just want to create like lower on-ramps for people. Meaning like, if you like financial content creators on the internet, follow more of them, right?
Yeah.
You like newsletters, subscribe to more of them. Find your own ways to care that work for you. So this is all under this first umbrella of knowing more about your finances.
Absolutely.
The second point that we make in this chapter about stepping into your power around money is you have to set boundaries that really honor the value of your time. And that's all about, we were just talking about with contributions, about knowing the things that you want and just setting those boundaries. I know like it's really easy to say and it's a lot harder to do, but whether that's at work, right? And saying like, nope, I'm planning on leaving because this was the day that I have to myself, or no, this was the day with my kids, or even boundaries with your partner. Like they gave you the day to yourself. Maybe you should put your phone on, do not disturb.
Absolutely. Or like, unless somebody is in the hospital or the house is burned down.
I don't want to hear from you today.
Don't need it. If you don't know the answer, you figure it out.
Right. I mean, and I guess this is the other really big one. And this is so much of what this section on power is about. It's about knowing what you want, knowing what your goals are as an individual. This is such a huge piece especially women, I see so many women give this away who couldn't answer this question because they've either gotten lost in their marriage or they've gotten lost in their kids. And they don't know what they want. They don't know what matters to them. Well, guess what? You're going to have a hard time having a say in your marriage, in your financial decisions, if you don't even know what you want. So that's
if you've
why
just given all of that power away.
This is one of the reasons why, like also when we talk about women who make a decision to step away from the workforce, women who, enter a season of caregiving, which I fully support. If that's something that's important to you and you want, I think it's a beautiful, amazing thing. But the thing you should not do is give it all away. You should continue to find ways to enrich your life, continue to find ways to expand your network. And I don't just mean professional network, I mean personal network. Absolutely. Find ways to continue bettering yourself, improving your community, improving your personal health, your mental health, your physical health. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that like you just don't let it all go. And when you don't, you're going to see suddenly, oh my God, I do know what I want. This is becoming crystallized for me that because I've taken back this time for myself, I've got clarity around what my own personal priorities are, what my own personal financial priorities are. And now when I sit down with my spouse, not only do I know what our money looks like and I know how to set boundaries around my time, but there's actually things that I can add to this list for me that we're going to solve for. That's critical. It's critical.
Absolutely. And I feel like all of these things, you don't need to be people who are earning huge amounts. You don't have to have, a lot of times when people think, oh, financial advisor, like I have no finances to advise, right? Like thinking, oh, I have to be at a certain point. It's like no matter what your situation is as far as, what money you're bringing home. I feel like these are truths that apply to no matter your situation. Whether you're financially cush or your things are very lean, like all of these things apply.
They apply no matter what. And I know that I know for a fact there are advisors out there that work with people from all different financial backgrounds. So I would just encourage you that if you think you need help beginning these conversations and you think you need help to wrap your head around your finances, whether that's you or your partner or you and your partner together, which it should be, there's someone out there to help you. There is.
So one thing that I love as you kind of wrapped up the book, as you summed everything up, one thing that you were talking about is like, no matter what your income is, I mean, there are people that have struggles. The struggles are the same. The feelings are the same. The emotions are the same, whether you're bringing in millions of dollars or, you're below the poverty line. It's like those feelings can be felt by anybody. Kind of summing up the book, you were saying what you hope couples walk away with, believing about money and love and legacy, and they're building together. What do you hope that people are walking away with?
A greater curiosity about their partner. You should want to always be learning more about the person that you love. I want people to realize that we don't get to take it all with us, right? When I think about what we leave behind, and people talk about legacy and you think of money, money is not the legacy. Your relationships, the way you care for people, the way you love people, that is the legacy. And so you have to ask yourself, I ask myself all the time, you're going to leave an impact on the people in your life. What kind of impact do you want to leave?
Truly. It kind of goes back to like the best things in life are free. It's the people, it's the ones that you love. You're not taking anything with you after this life. So let's have those relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, and there were enough people that we met who, were able to illustrate for us, one, how quickly life can change, but two, just that the things we think are so critical and really matter in the day-to-day scheme of things, the things, they just don't matter. It's the people who are there with you that matter.
Oh my gosh, Heather, thank you. I so appreciate it. I love this talk. I loved learning. I loved reading the book. The book is right here. This is it. Money Together. Heather Boneparth and her husband, Douglas Bonaparth. It is seriously, I mean, for somebody who the idea of a finance book just like makes me go, this was not a finance book. This is a relationships book. So everybody, like, order your copy of Money Together. It is such a good read. It will change your entire mindset around money and how you approach it and how you approach it in your relationship. So Heather, can you, before we sign off, can you tell everybody where they can find you, where they can follow your work?
Absolutely. I mean, the book is sold everywhere books are sold in all formats. But if you'd like to visit our book website, it is domoneytogether.com. We also write a weekly newsletter called The Joint Account, which you can find at readthejointaccount.com. And I'm online, like I am very visible, and I'm always making jokes. So you can find me at Average Joelle. Joelle's my middle name. So you can find me on social. Instagram is my platform of choice, but anywhere really.
Like a true elder millennial, it is, right?
Exactly. I'm afraid of TikTok. Don't ask me anything about that.
Oh my
I'm a
gosh,
lurker
no.
on TikTok.
Leave that to the kids. It's fine.
It's fine.
Heather, thank you so much for coming. I love talking to you. And yes, everybody go get yourself a copy of Money Together because it really is wonderful. I loved it.
Thank you so much.